Have you ever had an experience like this? Feeling somehow intimidated in front of someone you're meeting for the first time, or spending the whole day worrying about someone's expression? When we meet people, we tend to notice this first. It's their first impression. How important first impressions are, and how many things they determine. Today, let's explore this together in depth. If you enjoy today's topic, please subscribe and like this video. I'll reward you with great content for your wise life. Now, the first reason why we should look at this when meeting people is that first impressions are formed in just 0.1 seconds. Imagine this: a person passing by on the street, the moment you enter an interview room, the instant your eyes meet, at a blind date. In all these situations, our brains make judgments about the other person, almost unconsciously, in just 0.1 seconds. Perhaps before I consciously judge, the other person has already formed a first impression of me. This happens as fast as a computer running a program in an area that's difficult for us to control. Why is it decided in such a short time? Because humanity has evolved the ability to quickly judge others. For survival over a long period, we instinctively scan whether this person is a threat or someone who can help us. This evolutionary mechanism still deeply influences our behavior in modern society. For example, when we meet someone new in an unfamiliar environment, we unconsciously capture the other person's expression, eyes, posture, and even the atmosphere they give off in an instant, making a tentative evaluation of that person. This judgment is closer to an instinctive sense, engraved in our bodies over many years, rather than going through a rational thought process. And the bigger problem is that first impressions formed in this brief moment don't change easily. In psychology, this is called the primacy effect. It's the theory that information obtained first has far greater influence than information obtained later. If you made a positive impression at first meeting, even if you make small mistakes later, the other person is likely to understand generously. Thinking that can happen. For example, if you gave the first impression of being a kind and considerate person, even if that person acts a bit bluntly one day, they'll think maybe something bad happened and try to understand. This is because the initial good impression acts as a positive filter, softening subsequent, somewhat negative information. Conversely, if you gave a negative first impression, no matter how hard you try, changing that impression is extremely difficult. Even if you show good aspects later, there's a tendency to view you through a negative frame, thinking, my feeling at that time was right. It's like trying to glue together pieces of a broken mirror. No matter how precisely you attach them, it's hard to make it as perfectly smooth as before. The ripple effect of a negative first impression is far more extensive than you might think. Once formed, a negative image doesn't easily disappear from the other person's memory and tends to make them interpret even your other positive aspects negatively. For example, if you gave a somewhat arrogant or insincere impression at first meeting, no matter how humbly and sincerely you act later, the other person may misunderstand your actions as hypocritical or having ulterior motives. Breaking through such prejudice requires enormous time and effort, and sometimes even that effort can be in vain. That's why when we meet people for the first time, we should recognize the importance of that moment and consciously try to make a good impression. Seizing that 0.1 second that will never come again is the way to button up the first button of a relationship properly. Recognizing the importance of this first meeting and actively trying to form a good impression is not just a technical matter, but also an expression of respect and consideration for the other person. The second reason why we should look at this when meeting people is that first impressions affect all your relationships. Throughout our lives, we form relationships with countless people. These relationships are very diverse, ranging from personal friendships to professional collaborations, meeting with an interviewer, first encounter with a new colleague, negotiation with a business partner, date with a blind date partner, even a brief conversation with a shop owner you happen to meet. First impressions exist at the beginning of all these relationships, and this first impression plays a decisive role in determining which direction your relationship will flow, and even the success or failure of the relationship. Let's take an example: an applicant who makes a good first impression in an interview plants a positive image in the interviewer. A neat appearance, confident attitude, and bright smile make the interviewer think, "This person seems reliable and will fit well in our company." Such a positive first impression works in the applicant's favor throughout the interview process, and there's a tendency for the interviewer to evaluate the applicant's answers more positively, even if there are some shortcomings. If the first impression is good, they're more likely to be seen as talented with potential. Conversely, an applicant who made a poor first impression may not even get the chance to properly show their abilities, no matter how excellent they are. This is because a negative filter has already been applied in the interviewer's mind. The interviewer may try to find shortcomings in the applicant's answers, or even look at positive answers with suspicious eyes. The same applies to business meetings. If you make an impression that gives the other party a sense of trust at the first meeting, the possibility of closing a deal increases significantly. It's important to instill the confidence that I can trust and do business with this person. This doesn't just mean appearance. Various elements work together to form the first impression: the attitude of listening to others, a clear and distinct voice, appropriate eye contact, and more. For example, neatly arranged attire, a posture of seriously listening while looking into the other person's eyes, expressing opinions in a clear yet gentle tone. These can simultaneously convey professionalism and trust to the other person. Such a positive first impression helps you gain advantageous ground at the negotiation table and becomes an important foundation for building long-term business relationships. It's even more important in romantic relationships. If you go on a blind date and the other person is sitting in dirty clothes with no expression, how would that be? Probably the door of your heart would close before even starting a conversation. It's hard to feel curiosity or attraction toward the other person, and the conversation itself is likely to be cut off. But if they approach you with neat attire, bright expression, and confidence, you'll feel favorable and want to know more, right? Not just the other person's appearance, but the first word they say. Every small gesture plants a positive or negative impression in the other person, determining the direction of the relationship. The first impression is like a signal flare announcing the beginning of that relationship. Only when this signal flare is positive can a foundation be laid for the relationship to develop smoothly. A negative signal flare may not even let the sprout of a relationship emerge. We might think, "I'm a decent person, so they'll appreciate me later." But the problem is, many people don't wait for that later. We must keep in mind the fact that first impressions can determine the beginning and end of a relationship. Thus, first impressions are not just about external appearance, but a powerful element that greatly affects the quality and depth of all human relationships we form. The third reason why we should look at this when meeting people is that first impressions make your message more powerful, no matter how good the content of a speech. If the speaker approaches with an unconfident attitude and disheveled appearance, the power of that message inevitably diminishes. The audience becomes focused on the speaker's unstable appearance, being more influenced by the speaker's negative image than the message content. Ultimately, the core content the speaker wants to convey isn't properly delivered, and the speech's effectiveness greatly decreases. Conversely, even if the content is somewhat ordinary, if the speaker talks with a confident posture and sincere eyes, that message can resonate much more with the audience. The speaker's confident attitude and favorable first impression gain the audience's trust and increase focus on the message. This is exactly why first impressions go beyond mere external appearance and act as a powerful tool that increases the credibility and persuasiveness of the message you're trying to convey. Think about it. Let's say two salespeople are selling the same product. One approaches in neat attire, with a bright smile, and explains the product in a clear voice. They explain the product's advantages while looking into the customer's eyes and answer the customer's questions sincerely. The other introduces the product, mumbling with wrinkled clothes and a somewhat insincere attitude. They avoid the customer's gaze and seem reluctant to answer questions. Even if both deliver the same information about the same product, whose explanation will the customer trust more and be more likely to purchase the product from? Naturally, the salesperson, with a good first impression. First impressions are like a vessel containing a message. The more beautiful and solid the vessel, the more valuable the contents are felt to be. Your appearance, expression, attitude, voice, and body language. All these elements combine to create your first impression. And this first impression makes your message stand out more. Your first impression adds power to your words, gives persuasiveness to your arguments, and adds authenticity to your stories. Especially a genuine smile is an important element that maximizes the power of your message. Not just a smile with raised lip corners, but a Duchenne smile with wrinkles around the eyes simultaneously conveys friendliness and trust to the other person. It gives the feeling that this person is sincere with me. Such a smile adds weight to every word you say and opens the other person's heart. Also, appropriate eye contact is important. Talking while looking into the other person's eyes conveys the silent message that I'm focusing on your words, and my words are also true. This gives the other person a sense of being respected and increases focus on the conversation. However, be careful because excessive eye contact lasting more than 3 seconds can create a burden. There's something called exploring eyes that express favor and interest toward the other, which can act as an element that makes the other person feel more attractive beyond appropriate eye contact. Thus, first impressions are already saying a lot. Even if you say nothing, your appearance itself is a message. The more positive and powerful this message is, the more power the content you deliver when you open your mouth will gain. Ultimately, your first impression is an important part that determines your communication ability, and this exerts great influence not only on personal success, but throughout social life in general. The fourth reason why we should look at this when meeting people is that bad first impressions are very difficult to recover from. This connects with the primacy effect I mentioned earlier, but once a negative impression is made, it hardly disappears, like a stain on clothes. Even after washing, a faint mark often remains. Why is that? Because people tend to judge others based on initially formed impressions and interpret information to match that impression. This is called confirmation bias. For example, if you received the first impression that someone is lazy, even if you see that person working hard, there's an unconscious tendency to interpret it negatively, thinking they must be working hard just today, or they're probably doing it because someone is watching. This confirmation bias makes it very difficult to escape from the shackles of once formed first impressions. No matter how sincerely you change and make efforts, the other person's perspective is already trapped in a negative frame, tending to see your actions in a distorted way. Conversely, for someone who made a good first impression, even small mistakes are interpreted positively, like, they're not usually like that. Maybe they were tired, or mistakes can happen. Thus, a bad first impression can hide your actual self and plant prejudice about you in the other person. Breaking this prejudice and planting a good impression again requires enormous effort and time. It truly involves difficulties, like going against the current. Sometimes you may feel frustrated because of the other person's fixed notions that don't change, no matter how hard you try. It's like putting precious food in a broken bowl. No matter how valuable the food, it looks less valuable because of the bowl's flaws. A bad first impression can even lower the credibility of the message you're trying to convey and cause your abilities to be underestimated. This situation can cause fatal consequences, not only in personal relationships, but also in important social activities, like interviews and business meetings. As bad first impressions are this dangerous, we realize once again how important it is to plant a good impression from the beginning. You may not be able to do everything perfectly from the start, but at least making an effort to show favor to the other person with basic courtesy and neat appearance is essential. Being late, showing unconscious bad habits, leg shaking, nail biting, etc., or exaggerating yourself can seriously damage your first impression, so special attention is needed. These small mistakes can accumulate to form an irreversible, bad first impression. Thus, first impressions greatly affect all relationships and communication in our lives. So how can we create a favorable first impression? It's not difficult at all. First, neat appearance and tidy attire are the basics of basics. I'm not saying to wear expensive designer clothes. Clothes that fit well, are clean and ironed, along with a tidy hairstyle and clean skin, give the other person the impression that you're sincere and good at self-management. Especially, attire that considers TPO time, place, occasion, appropriate for the meeting place and situation can give the impression that you respect and consider the other person. For example, in formal settings, clothing that doesn't show shoulders and knees is good, and in casual gatherings, comfortable yet sophisticated attire would be good. Color can also affect first impressions. Red represents vibrancy, yellow represents brightness and splendor, white represents cleanliness, and black represents intensity. So using them appropriately, according to the situation, is also a good strategy. Attire is your first message. Second, don't forget a bright and positive expression, especially a smile. The most beautiful expression on a person's face is a smile, especially the Duchenne smile, with slight wrinkles around the eyes, simultaneously conveys sincerity and friendliness. A smile sends the silent message to the other person that I welcome you and enjoy our conversation. Practice a natural smile while looking in the mirror. A smile will further enhance your charm. Third, confident attitude and appropriate body language are important. A confident and upright posture expresses confidence. Crossing your arms or closing your body can give a defensive or arrogant impression, so it's better to avoid it. An open posture, that is, naturally lowering your arms or using light hand gestures appropriate to the content, gives the other person comfort and trust. Also, it's important to maintain appropriate eye contact while listening to the other person. This helps gain favor by giving the other person the impression that I'm focusing on your story. Fourth, give trust with a clear and distinct voice and gentle tone. Mumbling or speaking too fast or too slow is not good. It's good to clearly convey your thoughts and feelings while speaking in a gentle tone. It's important to lead a lively conversation by varying the volume and pitch of your voice. When speaking, it's good to pronounce clearly with confidence and show a considerate attitude to make it easy for the other person to understand. In addition to this, a pleasant scent can help leave a positive first impression. A subtle and natural fragrance can plant a neat and sophisticated impression in the other person. Also, an appropriate sense of humor can soften the atmosphere and make you appear more approachable and attractive. Preparing interesting episodes or stories is also a good method. Lastly, don't lose authenticity. Forcibly creating or showing a hypocritical appearance to make a good first impression can actually backfire. People surprisingly quickly discern the other person's authenticity. An awkward smile, exaggerated gestures, and fabricated words can actually cause discomfort. The best first impression is the comfort and sincerity that emanate from your true self. You don't have to be perfect. However, it's important to approach with a sincere attitude, containing a heart that respects and considers the other person. Remembering and calling the other person's name or genuinely complimenting them will further highlight your authenticity. With these efforts combined, you'll be able to leave a favorable first impression on people and build successful relationships. Do you now have a sense of what to look at and how to present yourself when meeting people? Ultimately, the most important thing when meeting people is winning the other person's heart. And the first step to winning that heart is making a good first impression. Please remember what we discussed today, and I hope you leave good impressions in all your future encounters. I'm rooting for all your encounters to lead to success. I'll come back next time with more beneficial stories. Thank you.